I was a chef. I'd never run a business. Knowing that, you needed support from people that knew how to run a business and could show you how to run a business was really essential as well. I think, understanding that you don't have all the answers and, there might be people that you need to get some advice from.
We absolutely love celebrating milestones here at the Dirty Linen podcast. We love celebrating all kinds of milestones. It's great to celebrate a year of a restaurant's life. Today, we are celebrating 20 years of Movida Original in Hosier Lane, a Melbourne institution that people go back to again and again for its excellent Spanish food and awesome atmosphere. Today, we are speaking to founder and chef Frank Camorra, who is just back from another trip to Spain. Frank, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Dani, thank you for having me. How
does it feel, 20 years?
Kind of like middle-aged restaurant, I guess. You're like it's a wonderful achievement to make 20 years. It's sort of, I guess, a feeling of satisfaction, but still like a long way to go.
Oh, well, that's good to feel like, a bit of freshness in amongst the institutional status. Tell us about, there's Movida Original, which is, celebrating the milestone, but there are other Movidas. For people who haven't engaged with what you do, give us a sense of the scope of Movida these days.
So Movida Original was obviously the original, as the name suggests, in Hosier Lane. And that sort of evolved a fair bit, I think, over the 20 years to sort of the most refined style of food and the most iconic sort of version of Movida. And then we opened Movida next door, I think in around 2007, which is a more casual, which I guess is like what we initially started Movida as, sort of more of a classic tapas bar. And then we opened a larger format, Movida Key, which is just been recently renovated, and that's been there well over 10 years, 12 or 13 years, and that's kind of like a more rustic, but at the same time, I don't know how to, just a bigger, grown-up version of Movida, I guess. And we also have an outlet in Auckland as well, which we've had for a year and a half.
And there's been other Movida outlets or locations over the years. Like, tell us about the ones that have come and gone.
Well, yeah, we've had a few hit and misses, that's for sure. I guess, the one that stands out mostly is Movida Sydney. So we had a restaurant in Surrey Hills, Sydney for a good 5 or 6 years, which was amazing, like a great experience. I moved there for about 9 months or so. And, for the first 3 or 4 years, it went extremely well, but it slowly sort of started deteriorating. And then we tried to move that into the CBD. That fell through, and we ended up packing that up and moving back to Melbourne. And we've had a couple of other Movidas, one internationally in Bali, which was magnificent. It was, a great experience doing something overseas. In fact, my head chef at Aki, Movida Aki, the previous head chef, has now opened a restaurant there, Santera, Bali, which is doing really well. And yeah, interesting, like having something where it's a totally alien environment to cook in and whole new range of ingredients. And that was a great experience. We had a bakery, Movida Bakery, which is now Tivoli Road Bakery. So Michael James, who's a fantastic baker, was running that for several years for us, and then he took on the business himself. My God, what else have we done? And Lawn, Movida Lawn as well, which we ran that for several years, 3 or 4 years. And Maryvale bought the hotel pub, and we ran that under them for a year, and then they've got a Toddy's there. So we've had lots of different restaurants. We've obviously Melbourne-based, and our cornerstone restaurant is Movida Original.
Wow, it's so interesting. I would love you to talk about the balance between presenting Spanish food in all the different ways that you do and being a restaurateur who's, opening and closing businesses. And I assume making some pretty tough calls along the way. Like, how do you, play all those different roles?
Well, I guess each of the restaurants always had its own identity. We never really tried to make a replica of any one thing. So, for me, even the aesthetics of the restaurants needs to change. It needs to sort of be impacted by its environment, by where it is, the culture of the place. And I think, but saying that, it needs to retain the essence of what a Spanish restaurant is. For me, Movida Original is a classic example. It's a comedor, which is a dining room, and it's adjacent to a bar. And that's essential. That is where the restaurant gets its vibe from, where it gets its energy. And it's like, classic maybe Italian restaurants, a trattoria, which we all recognise, a bistro for a French restaurant. So that style of comedor and a bar is very essentially Spanish. So each of them have had that element, and sort of an open kitchen for the theatre and the energy. But they've all had very different models of what they offer and how the aesthetics look. So that's been important, that they have their own identity. But I mean, opening and closing, you after a certain time, you sort of realise, what you can achieve there and what you can't achieve. And sometimes restaurants do have a certain lifespan, and they're not going to go any further. So you got to make some tough decisions, but, it's better to make those tough decisions earlier on than later on when, that you're in a massive hole and you can't sort of just walk away from it.
So, I mean, given that, the fact that Movida Original has hit 20 years feels even more special. And, I was there at the restaurant recently, and it struck me how timeless it feels. I mean, the brick floors and that epic bar, like, it just feels like it's been there forever and is going to be there forever. Do you feel like, there's something that you hit upon there from the beginning, or have you, I guess, has it changed much along the way?
Look, I think it's certainly evolved, but it felt from day one like for me a magical place. I always felt really good about what we were trying to achieve there. I mean, it was a massive risk when we first opened. I mean, we were doing something that was very different from Melbourne 20 years ago. If you look at how dining was in 2002, it certainly is nothing like what it is now in Melbourne. And I remember, even having a bar, which is, really, quite normal now where people eat at a bar. But, 20 years ago when we first opened, people didn't want to eat at the bar, and it felt a bit stale initially for the first few months until, people started to recognise that, having the same food at the bar, having interaction with your barman and server across the bar, having interaction with the person next to you was actually fun and enjoyable, and that sort of sense of joy can be more than just the food on the plate, but the whole experience. So I mean, that's quintessential Spanish dining experience. You go to Taberna, which I was in several just recently. I mean, one of the guys across from me, I think one of the customers was complaining about somebody leaning over and grabbing something on the food, and the barman said, "This is a Taberna. You're meant to rub shoulders. You're meant to meet people you don't usually would rub shoulders with or speak to. This is what these places are about." And I think that's kind of the essence of Movida. You do have an experience that you might not, just have by sitting down at a table with yourself and your partner. So for me, that's still really is maintained. And that whole style of sharing food, which creates, more atmosphere as well. Again, that wasn't common 20 years ago. And the style of food, I guess, what we do, is Spanish food, but it's refined, or it's maybe through a Melbourne lens somehow, that it's a little bit different to what you find in Spain, but still very, recognisable. But I think that style has just resonated with diners. And I mean, we haven't changed very much. We've, tidied up the toilets since we opened, and and we've made a couple of touches here and there, but essentially the same restaurant that we opened 20 years ago. It just seems to have hit a chord with Melbourne diners. And I think that style of dining, which is now, how we like to eat.
I love that. I'd love to talk about some of the iconic dishes and to ask you if you feel, I don't know, like Sting being ever asked to play Roxanne, like are the hits a burden? So you know which ones we need to talk about. We need to talk about the smoked tomato sorbet with anchovy on toast. And I think even the idea of anchovy on toast, which is it's almost a cliche at the moment. It's like it was yeah, exactly. It was a bit radical back in the day. And then we also need to talk about the beef cheek with the cauliflower puree. Let's start with those.
Look, I think, the smoked tomato sorbet anchovy dish is something that I actually really, really enjoy eating even now. That's 20 years on. So it's just strange. It's something that, I've had, several times a month, and I still really love to eat it. And if I'm having lunch today with a friend actually that's a Spanish chef, and we're going to definitely start with that. So for me, I mean, it's what represents Movida food really well, because it really is that. Three ingredients. It's bread, anchovies, and tomato, which is a combination that you're going to find really anywhere in the Mediterranean. Those three ingredients go well together in Italian cuisine, Greek cuisine, French cuisine, and obviously Spanish cuisine. But it's just been tweaked and refined a little bit, as I was saying before, is I guess what we do at Movida is just, without making something unrecognisable, but just giving it some added touch. And, that really is a dish that represents us really well, and I think it's delicious. So I certainly have no problem serving that and eating that. The beef cheek, again, it's one of those dishes that we've tried to take off the menu here and there, but it's basically been, the customers that have kept, wanting us to return it. So we, it's a dish that, fantastic. I love it in winter. I can't understand why someone would order it in the middle of summer, but they do. It's one of our biggest salads. It's very simple. It's braised beef cheek in a really rich Pedro Jimenez sauce. So what's not to love? Falls apart in your spoon. It's comfort food, but it also, I think, looks fantastic just in the simplicity of it. One dish I've got to say that's still on the menu, that's been on since, 2005 or so. Actually won the Good Food Guide Dish of the Year back then, which is a air-cured beef, Wagyu beef tocino, which is like, imagine like, jamon, but beef, with a truffle foam and a poached egg. To be honest, that's one dish I cannot ever eat again in my entire life, because it's such an intense flavor. But again, it's something we cannot take off. So at certain times we've run out of the Wagyu and we haven't been able to have it on the menu, and customers have been in a fury over it. So, some dishes that we've had on the menu forever. The creme caramel is another one that, I think we do a great job with, which has been 20 years on our menu, and again, I can eat that no problems. But yeah, probably the tocino is the one that I'm definitely sick of, but we won't take off the menu.
Classic. Well, at least you're not obliged to eat it.
No. Well, the thing is, you got to taste it though. That's the problem. And it just yeah.
Frank, tell me about the many trips to Spain you've taken over the years, and how they feed into what you do.
I guess, the last trip I took was the first one since COVID, actually, just before COVID, 2019, was the last one, and then just the recent one, which I've just gotten back from. And look, it's a little bit of work, so I generally take a food tourist group from Australia. So I did that, but along with that, I always ended up finding time for the head chefs or managers to come over. So I think all the head chefs have done a tour with me to Spain at some stage or other. So basically it's a time to, just reassess what we're doing at Movida, and just, I guess, reset a little bit and just go back to, okay, this is the food that we're representing in a Melbourne context, but have we moved too far? Have we not, sort of given it, I guess the respect it deserves, while not, just slavishly copying the dishes. So I guess, it's for me, it's refresher. It's also just the time spent with the people we work with, that, you're having a meal, 3 times a day with them, and you're talking about food constantly. You're talking about wine as well. So it's, it's just a great opportunity to get away from the restaurant and talk about, you know, what you actually do, because sometimes you just get lost in the day-to-day and the processes and you lose context of what you're trying to do from day one. So I guess, yeah, it's a great reset. It's great fun. It's just been an opportunity this time around to do that with new staff as well we haven't done it with.
And were there any particular highlights this time?
I guess I've noticed a massive difference in Spain over the last 5 years, especially in places like Seville and Madrid, the major centres, where there seems to be a more professional, larger restaurant group sort of like a foothold, I guess, on the restaurant scene. So what used to be in Seville, you know, lots of mums and dads and little restaurants, you can see as, you know, lots more larger groups, more professional, more refined, which is good and bad. I mean, I guess, you know, it's careers for people, it's, you know, progression and all that as well. But it's also, you know, a lot of the little places have lost a little bit of the essence because there's a lot fewer of them. But saying that, I had some amazing meals in Seville, for instance, Zabana, which is it's only a locally owned little restaurant, but the food was just that little bit more refined than normal and really classic dishes done very well. So I guess that, you know, that style of molecular cuisine that was prevalent in the early 2000s in Spain, and up until not recently, you're not seeing that anymore, and you're seeing just really well represented classic dishes done very, very well with incredible ingredients. And I think that's, you know, what we try to do. And you can see that is really the general theme is in Spain at the moment, from, you know, the smaller restaurants to the restaurant groups. So, yeah, I think the quality's improved, but but you can sort of see the little bit of the, you know, maybe the authenticity of the places has changed.
It's really interesting. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of that, the same trajectory here with it's so hard to run an independent restaurant these days. There are a lot more groups, and yeah, as you say, there are pluses and minuses. It's great for people to be able to see a career path with one employer in some ways, but it is also sad to lose that individuality and that sort of that low entry point for people who have something they want to express in a restaurant setting. It's interesting, but yeah, it's also really interesting to think about. Spain was so much at the cutting edge of, you know, what we thought of as contemporary food for quite a while, and as you say, that's sort of, I don't know, that's eased back a little bit. Perhaps, you know, people more look to Scandinavia or other places and think about that as, you know, the cutting edge of cuisine. But yeah, it's so interesting to think about. Do you feel like Spanish food here has progressed much in the 20 plus years that you've been doing it?
Yeah, it has incredibly. Like it's had a complete, I think, renaissance in the amount of options and how Spanish food is represented. I mean, you know, it was pretty much, you know, tourist food when we started. You know, there was Spanish restaurants, but, you know, it was gambas a la ajillo, really bad paella. You know, it wasn't really, it was the food that when I first started cooking, actually when I was still at uni, I was working in a Spanish restaurant in Geelong called Bombaleos, for instance. This is a classic example of what Spanish food was. And it was Bombaleo, you know, the Gypsy King song, and that was being played on the, you know, over the stereo system. And the food was, you know, it was like really bad garlic prawns, really bad paella. And then we'd have every day the most amazing staff meal. So Gerardo was Yana, who was actually a family friend, and you know, he'd make black pudding, and he'd do sarsuelas and all these dishes that were, you know, from his background, and absolutely delicious. And I said to him, why don't we serve this to the customers? Like, he goes, oh no, they're never going to like this. This is for us. And so, and I think that, you know, has definitely changed. So, you know, the authenticity of Spanish food, the diversity of Spanish food is definitely showcased in, you know, so many restaurants in Australia, and also the modernity of Spanish food as well. and the quality of the ingredients, which, when we first started, there was one anchovy in Australia, or tis. Now, how many varieties of amazing anchovies are imported, and, selection of Spanish wines, and, Spanish ham, and, just the availability of ingredients now, which just never existed 20 years ago, is, it's changed completely.
I'd love to talk about, how you bring people through the business, how you train, how you retain, and how important you think that's been to the longevity of your business.
I think, for me, it's all about, it's a cliche, but it is all about the people in the business. I feel very grateful that we've had such longevity in, just about all our senior staff. Obviously it is hospitality, and some staff move on quicker than others. But, when people are with us, they, for a while, they tend to stick around for a very long time after that. So, one of our staff members, Tuan, is now, he's 23 years. He started with us at the Karen Hotel, first ever person I hired is still working with us, we had quite a few staff actually leave over COVID. So people that have been with us, like Dave Roberts is the previous head chef. He'd been, 13, 14 years, and Ewan Crawford, who, now runs Livy, was well over 10 years as well. But then, we've got a younger crop of staff, Adrian, who runs Movida Key, who's, now, was an apprentice, came back, has worked for 8 years. Kane and Lily and all these people that have just stuck with us. I don't know why that is. I think, it's important to create a good culture to come back to. I think it's important to look after people, and it's important to respect people, and I think that's the key. And then after that, it's really, hoping that we can, instill the culture and the information and the support they need to do their job well. So, and I think, it's not me. It's not, my business partner, Andy. It's not, Louisa that runs our, admin and HR. It's all of us and the culture of the place. I think it's a fun place to work, but we are a serious business, and, I have this sort of, I hate when people call a business a family. It's not a family. It's a business, but, we want to see everyone succeed and do well. And I think that's essential, because, the more everyone succeeds and does well, then the more the business succeeds and does well.
I'd love to take a moment to acknowledge Lily McGrath, who recently was named a co-winner of the Age Good Food Guide's Young Chef of the Year alongside Cameron Tayyap from Amaru. Tell us about Lily.
Well, she's amazing. She's been with us, as a first-year apprentice. Now she's the sous chef at Movida Original. She's been doing that for several years, and she's the loveliest chef to work with, super creative, but also creates a really good dynamic within the kitchen. Everyone loves working with her. She's gone through a transition, and and I think that's not easy in this industry, I reckon, because it's mostly pretty male dominated, blokey sort of environment. Not as much now as it used to be, but, when she first started, certainly. So, she's done it really beautifully, and just an asset to what we do, but also an asset to the business and the culture of the place. So, she's really loved here.
That's so great. And I don't know if you've even had a chance to go to your own Pinchos event at Movida Arquee, because it started while you were away. But I have to tell you, it's so good.
Oh, thank you.
Do you want to tell people about that?
Yeah, I just had a little debrief with the guys that ran it, and they seem to be loving it. So if the chefs are loving it, then I reckon the customers generally love it as well. So, Saturday lunches was something that we never really opened for at Akeem. We just thought this is a great opportunity to do something a little bit different and create something that we haven't done before. So I guess it represents that sort of bar style pincho bar where, the food's all placed up on the bar. You help yourself. You order drinks at the bar. You can sit or stand wherever you like. It's not, a restaurant. It's not meant to be a restaurant experience, but it can be if you like. And it's really just, a whole bunch of food that our chefs make during the week, just made into little pinchos. So pincho is like a tapa, but with a little stick in it, basically. And up you go, help yourself, delicious little morsels. I think it's essential that it's done well, because it can be, it can be a really bad experience even in Spain as well. So, it's all freshly made and delicious food that's, just convenient, fun, a great way to, gather with friends or family.
Yeah, well, I've been twice and I've really loved it. And I have to say, it's better than San Sebastian. I mean,
really?
The experience of San Sebastian is extraordinary, and, obviously I love it, iconic, great. But just it's at a different price point, but the quality of the produce and the creativity and everything just looks so beautiful. There's definitely a lot of poise to it.
Well, I'm going to have to get to the next one, Dani. Thank you.
Yeah, you got to get there if you can get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Frank, a lot of people, who haven't had as much experience in the industry are listening to this, and I would love you to give them advice. Like, what do you think are some of the key lessons you've learnt along the way that have allowed you to be in the game for so long?
I guess, I mean, for me, I can only speak from my experience, and everyone is different and how they travel through this industry. But for me, what I think has helped me is like a sense of authenticity about what I do. So it's something that the style of food, the style of hospitality is definitely coming from a place where I believe it's authentic and I love, and I want to do it because I believe in it. I think that if you do something because it's what's in fad, what's in fashion, what is currently in mode, I don't think that necessarily translates to longevity. I think you need to find something, you have to, interact with those elements, but you don't create your business around that. I think you need to find something that, really resounds deeply in you, and then that's going to see you through really tough times and, and make you make the right decisions. I think, apart from that, you need to also listen to other people and don't believe that you got all the answers. I think when, like a really good example is when I opened Movida, before we opened in the laneway, my background was fine dining, and I really, wanted to create a fine dining experience. But what I found was the customers were taking the dishes and sharing the dishes. This is when we were in the pub in the Carron, and I remember, the guys going, well, why don't we just do that if that's what the customers do? And it's like, okay, that makes sense. I was trying to get away from all the stereotypes of what Spanish food is, tapas and bullfighting and, flamenco music, and trying to experience something a bit more, I thought was more, in line with my, my training and heritage. And then realising the customers actually really enjoyed that, and then I started enjoying cooking that, and gave me a sense of more creativity. I guess that's another thing. Don't be scared to take advice from the customer, from other people in that are involved in the business. But ultimately, you've got to stick to your vision. That's what you want to do, and that's how you are going to feel like you're 20 years down the track and still invigorated to go to work. Because if you're just doing it because that's the colouring in the dots, then it's not really going to make you want to do it for very long.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's that balance between a strong sense of self or a through line, but also, I guess, the humility to listen and to make changes when you need to.
Absolutely, and also understanding your limitations as well. So, I mean, I was a chef. I'd never run a business. Knowing that, you needed support from people that knew how to run a business and could show you how to run a business was really essential as well. I think, understanding that you don't have all the answers, and, there might be people that you need to get some advice from and help you sort of structure your business a bit better. So, so it, has financial longevity as well. So I think it's essential.
Have there been any highlights you can point to along the way? Any pinch me moments where you're like, oh, I can't believe that this is happening?
I think the first was when we first opened Movida, and I think I might have explained earlier that, we had, the first initial months that we opened, the dining room was completely full, booked out, and our bar was completely empty. And there was people that were coming up and no, we don't want to eat at the bar. That doesn't feel like, we're going to have dinner, so we'll go somewhere else. And then, slowly but surely, I remember looking up, a few months, and it almost felt like quite instantaneous, looking up from the past and seeing a crowd of people eating and drinking on the bar. In fact, like passing food over their heads to the people behind them, like exactly what would happen in Spain. I go, my God, this is what I wanted to create. And it was like a tingle, up my backbone going, this is amazing. This is exactly what I wanted to create. And that was for me, that essential moment that I realized this could work.
Oh, I got a tingle. That's so great. I love that. That's amazing. Wonderful. Frank, what a great chat. What a useful chat for a lot of people, and what a milestone to celebrate. Really appreciate your time and your insights today. And yeah, should we toast to the next 20 years?
Another 20 years, hopefully. Yeah. Hope I'm still around.
Amazing. Love it. And congratulations.
Thank you, Dani.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This